The anime starts in a hospital corridor, empty and silent. And over this scene, a female voice says, "The most intriguing thing possible. Her wish is to keep living, even after she dies." And from the silence, we're thrown straight into the noise. A university welcome party? Glasses clinking, upperclassmen shouting, that chaos of people desperately trying to make friends. In the middle of the chaos, our protagonist, Serrano, a guy in a hoodie, is practically fallen asleep sitting up. His roommate, Narumi, demands some excitement, and Serrano shoots back that he was dragged there against his will, and that he's dying of sleep because Narumi spent the whole night moving furniture around in their dorm room. Narumi even apologizes for being a weird roommate, but does it with the utmost pride. And the party ends up putting Serrano's soul on display. The upperclassmen sing happy birthday to a freshman whose name nobody knows. Literally, happy birthday, dear whatever your name is. And he dies of secondhand embarrassment. A grown guy gets up to make an important announcement, introduces the new student, Yuko Hayase, makes the poor girl stand up in front of everyone, and confesses his feelings. He says he's never fallen in love at first sight before, but he just can't help himself and asks her out right there in the middle of the party, with everyone shouting, "Say yes!" And Yuko responds with the subtlety of a missile. "Sorry, you're not my type." Narumi finds it funny, but Serrano watches the whole thing with genuine disgust. He admits that he's never liked people who stand out. Maybe because he hates that kind of desperation, all that effort to get attention. He doesn't like anything that shakes things up too much, not even shaking his drink for that matter. Narumi laughs, but he takes note of the guy's vibe. A guy who made discretion his way of life. But then Narumi notices a corner of the hall that feels like a whole different world. An isolated table where two girls who are way too pretty sit, and a calm atmosphere that stands out from the rest of the party. Serrano votes not to go anywhere near him. With girls on that level, they're not even going to pay attention. Narumi obviously is already heading over and introduces himself without hesitation. "Ushiana Rimi. And this is my roommate, Kakeru Serrano." On the other side, the girl with pink hair introduces herself, Yuko Hayase, the same one from that epic rejection, and the other, with long dark hair and a refined air that's almost out of place at a party like this, Koharu Fuyuzuki. And then a small detail happens that changes the whole episode. Yuko quietly says, "Koharu, it's right at 12 o'clock, pointing out the position of something on the table, like on a clock. Koharu thanks her and reaches for it perfectly. Serrano finds it odd and asks if her eyesight isn't good, and Koharu replies with a disarming naturalness, "That's right, I'm blind." On the way out, it's late at night with a huge moon in the sky. Koharu comes out laughing, saying she didn't understand anything the teacher said and that she got startled when she heard her own name in class. And Serrano, looking at the moon, thinks about the question he can't swallow. Does she really not get to see the moon? He admits to himself, if he lost his sight, he definitely wouldn't be able to be as cheerful as she is. As the four of them walk, Yuko explains her own role. The university has student guides, volunteers who help students with disabilities navigate campus life, and she's one of them. She says she met Koharu at the welcome ceremony, and that today it was Koharu herself who asked for help. She said she wanted to go to a welcome party when she became a college student. Yuko wraps it up with, "It's amazing, isn't it?" And Serrano can only manage a, "Well, yeah," because amazing doesn't even begin to cover it, and he doesn't have the words for it yet. Then Yuko switches to matchmaker mode, finds out that Serrano takes the same computer science class as Koharu on Monday mornings, and throws out the suggestion, doesn't he want to be a student guide? He could keep an eye on Koharu just during that class, only if she needs it. Serrano freezes on the spot, and before he can answer, there's a little mishap. On the way, an old bike parked right on top of the tactile paving ends up falling over, complete with an awkward apology, and Koharu reassures them with a laugh. Anyone would knock over that beat-up bike. The real problem is people parking their bikes on the tactile paving. She wished more people knew about this. Yuko, being sharp, already gets his contact info. If Koharu needs anything, I'm counting on you. And inside, Serrano admits what he didn't say out loud. He wanted to explain that he's not good at this kind of thing, And then the anime opens up the character's basement. When his mother got divorced, the two of them had to live off the kindness of relatives, and finding safe places became the boy's special skill. Whenever he stood out, he was hated. So he learned to read the room and become invisible, to not get involved, because that way is better. We see Serrano as a child in this flashback, and suddenly, the guy who hates when things get shaken up makes perfect sense. It's not being dramatic, it's a scar. The group arrives at the building where Koharu lives, and as they're saying goodbye, boom, fireworks go off in the direction of the university. Everyone looks up at the sky, and Koharu gets startled by the bang and loses her balance. Serrano reflexively grabs her by the shoulders, and she says with a smile, "Your hands are so warm, Serrano." The guy pulls his hands back, apologizing. She says it's all right, and the viewer's heart already knows where this story's headed. When the fireworks end, he blurts out, "We couldn't see them, huh?" And he immediately corrects himself, feeling awkward. But Koharu answers without any drama at all. No, she can't see the fireworks, but she really likes them anyway. And one day, she wants to set off fireworks with friends. Serrano keeps turning those two questions over and over in his mind the whole way home. How do you set off fireworks in a world where you can't see? How do you watch fireworks in a world where you can't see? Was she lying or telling the truth? His conclusion? This person is really intriguing. A few days later at the university, Yuko sends Serrano a message online, "Take care of Koharu." And there she is, alone in the classroom. Serrano walks over and says good morning. And nothing. He tries again, and she answers with a, "Huh?" Lost. Then it clicks for him. She can't see where he's looking, so there's no way for her to know the good morning was meant for her. He corrects himself, "Good morning, Fuyutsuki." And she asks, just to be sure, if it's Serrano, because unless someone says their name, she can't be certain who it is. But this time, she took a guess based on his tone. His voice is distinctive. Most people speak in C. His is more like an F. Serrano asks if she has perfect pitch, and Koharu replies that she's played piano since she was a child. Her bookmark falls, he picks it up and gives it back, and she thanks him with a, "You really are a good person, Serrano," which hits him right in the chest. In class, they're covering the AND operation, the OR operation, the teacher's off on a tangent, and Serrano notices the machine she uses to take notes, a Braille typewriter. And his inner monologue is strikingly honest for an anime. There's the part of him that automatically thinks, that must be tough. And then there's the part of him that notices that thought and feels bad about it. It's the perfect portrait of someone learning in real time to see a person instead of just a condition. After class, he was already leaving when he sees Koharu's cane fall and roll away, and she's searching for it on the floor. How awful, he thinks. At a moment like this, he hesitates for a second, wants to ask someone else for help, and feels relieved that there's no one else around. The girl who talks about her blindness so lightly also has her own pride, her own exhaustion, her own embarrassment. Serrano comes back. "Fuyutsuki, wait, I'll get it for you." He hands her the cane and she jokes that she should put a bell on it. He answers in the same playful tone, but says that after it falls and stops, it won't make any more noise, and they both laugh. Then she asks if he has a second class. He says no. She then says, "Don't you want to kill some time with me?" She adds that Yuko said she's busy, online by the way, and they agree that later she'll show him how to use it. And the two of them head to the vending machine area, where the best conversation of the episode happens. He offers to buy, but she says she'll get it herself and goes straight to the machine to press a button. Serrano, curious, asks how she chose. And Koharu, all mysterious, "It's just that this machine is my machine." And Serrano, keeping his cool, "Oh, is Miss Fuyutsuki's family by any chance a vending machine manufacturer?" And Koharu bursts out laughing. Laughing, she says he's a joker and asks if he thought she was someone more down to earth who doesn't laugh at jokes. He swallows hard. Then she explains, "My machine. For someone who can't see, an unknown vending machine is like Russian roulette. You want milk tea and you get Shiruko instead." Serrano thinks it sounds fun. She quickly cuts in with a, "No, it's not fun," which makes him super embarrassed. Then, laughing, she adds that sometimes it actually is, but every day it's a hassle. So the solution is to pick a machine and master it. Yuko taught her the buttons. And when Serrano was impressed that she memorized the whole machine, Koharu admits, "It was just the milk tea button and the sugar button." At the table, she shows off the magic of her phone, a screen reader which reads everything she touches. 1 tap, it reads. 2 taps, it selects. 2 or 3 fingers change the action. It was a heck of a job to train, but humans are capable of anything when they need to be. When it comes to typing, she uses voice input. And during the demonstration, Yuko's message gives it away. Kakeru, sorry, I have plans today. Yep, the friends pulled the classic trick of leaving the two of them alone, and nobody here is going to complain about that. And Kakeru sums up her own philosophy in one sentence. We blind people live just like everyone else. Serrano just looks at her, mulling it over. She can refer to herself as blind without hesitating for a second. He could never say he was raised only by his mother with that kind of ease. How many internal struggles must she have gone through to reach that kind of peace? And he realizes he doesn't know how far he can go with his questions, what might hurt her. He feels an invisible wall between them, and then comes the stab of self-awareness. It's a wall he built himself. He just had to ask, just had to have a real conversation. He knows that. He knows. But what if? The enemy shows Serrano as a child, sitting alone inside a glass cube in the dark. The invisible wall has always been his home. She's the one who breaks the silence. Serrano, Abby too. He stammers out a, yeah. She holds out her phone, asking him to scan the QR code, and when her contact pops up on his screen, Koharu's profile picture is a flower Serrano had never seen before. In the college hallway, a cane slips from someone's hand and falls to the floor, and Serrano bends down, picks it up, and hands it back to its owner. It's Fuyutsuki. She thanks him, and it mentions that it was just like last week, which already shows this isn't the first time he's done this for her. A little later, at the terrace table, the two of them are sitting when someone arrives and greets them, and Fuyutsuki guesses right away who it is. Just by the voice. It's Yuko. Serrano's surprised, and she explains that Yuko's voice is cute, easy to recognize. And then Serrano's left with a question stuck in his throat. That doubt everyone has, but no one knows if they can ask. Does hearing really get sharper when someone loses their sight? He wanted to know, but thinks that asking a bunch of questions would be rude. So he swallows it. But Yuko doesn't swallow anything. She sits down and asks the same thing, straight up. And Serrano is just there, caught between shock and envy, thinking she's the boldest person in the world for asking exactly what he didn't have the guts to. And Fuyutsuki answers without a problem. She says it's not really like that the whole story about telling where things are by their echo is impossible. But she says that since she's always played piano, she can actually tell some things apart. And Yuko digs deeper, finding out that Koharu plays piano changes everything, because that's exactly what she needs. She explains that she's on the university festival committee and that there's going to be a jazz show using the piano in the memorial hall. She needs to make sure the sound is coming out right, and Koharu immediately offers to check the tuning. Then Yuko turns to Serrano with a request that he accompany the two of them to the hall. He complains, wants to know why he has to go along, and she hits him with a decisive argument. He's going to the dorm anyway, and the hall is inside there. There's even a sign forbidding entry to unauthorized people. She pleads, whines a little, and Serrano gives in, grumbling that, well, it's on his way anyway. Already on the way to the hall, Yuko's cell phone rings. She answers, listens, and runs off. Inside the memorial hall, Serrano helps her sit on the bench. And as soon as Fuyutsuki puts her hands on the keys, she lets out a gasp of surprise. It's a grand piano. He doesn't understand how she knows, and she explains that the feel of the keys is different. On a grand piano, the keys come back up much faster. And then Serrano asks the question that maybe was overdue, if it's possible to play even without being able to see. She answers yes, if it's music she memorized when she could still see. He mentions that there are blind pianists, and she replies, laughing, that those people are on a whole different level. She herself can't learn new music without being able to see. Then she shares something that really sticks with you. She says there are a lot of memories and habits left over from when she could see. When she's playing, she looks toward where the sheet music would be. If someone talks to her, she lifts a phrase. If there are fireworks, she looks up and realizes she can imagine what it was like when she could see. And because of that, she feels grateful that she had a time when she could see. And Serrano is left speechless because he doesn't know how to react. He keeps wondering if it's right to find that admirable or if reacting that way would be offensive. He doesn't say anything. Fuyutsuki admits that she gets a little nervous knowing he's going to listen to her play. She asks if she can start. He says yes, and she plays. And what comes out of there takes Serrano out of the world. When the music plays, he's not there anymore. He's on a beach. He feels the sand. He feels the sea rise, licking his feet, the foam coming and going, and down there in the water, dolphins crossing the blue. He closes his eyes and lets himself drift away. And when he comes back to himself, he can only think one thing: she's really good. When she finishes and asks what he thought, Serrano tries to sound like he knows what he's talking about and guesses that Bach is really good. She replies that it wasn't Bach. He guesses Mozart. She says he didn't even come close. The piece is called Mar da Arabia by a composer named Harumi Fuki and is played a lot at piano competitions. She herself played it in 5th grade and confesses a little trick. She likes to play it slower than the sheet music says. And Serrano drops the act, sincerely tells her that she plays really well and that it's amazing to be able to play a piece like that since elementary school. She thanks him, happy, and asks to play a little more. After checking everything, she gives a verdict. The piano needs a light tuning, but it's tolerable as is. And then she thanks him, not just for the piano, but also for when her cane fell. And she shares something that really tugs at the heart. She had the feeling that he would pick up the cane for her again, and he really did. That made her really happy. Serrano tried to dodge it, arguing that there was no way she could have known it would be him, and Fuyutsuki just replies simply that it was him. And then she comes clean. She says she wanted to have tea on the terrace with him again, but she was too shy to call him in the classroom, and that it was really nice to be able to talk with him like this again. And Serrano, without making a big deal out of it, points out the obvious. The two of them have already added each other on the messaging app. She can just send him a message. She asks, carefully, if that's okay. He says it's not a problem. A few days later, in a psychology class, the teacher explains that affinity between people can intensify surprisingly easily because of phenomena like the mere exposure effect and the suspension bridge effect. We grow fond of people we see often, and we mistake the racing of our hearts caused by fear for excitement. And Serrano keeps mulling that over. He thinks about the people we run into all the time and jokes to himself that if that's how it works, pretty soon he'll end up falling for Narumi, his roommate. He even mocks the idea himself, but admits that sharing a room really did make him feel like the two of them get along well. In the middle of that same week, in the afternoon, his phone buzzes with a message from her. Fuyutsuki lets him know that it looks like they can get into the Mijimaru and asks if he wants to go too. And Serrano sighs. He barely told her she could text him, and now here it is. There's nothing he can do. And here's the deal with the Mijimaru. The university has a program that trains Navy officers, and maybe that's why they have a whole sailing ship set up on dry land. It's an important cultural relic. When he gets there, he calls out for her, introduces himself, lets her know he's arrived, and she responds with his name, excited, and Serrano's heart races. But he just studied this, so he already has the explanation up his sleeve. That can only be the suspension bridge effect. He thanks his psychology class. He wants to know what got into her to suddenly want to go onto the ship. And she explains, usually there's a steel gate in front of the stairs and no one can go in, but since she really wanted to, she went to the office to ask and found out that on that day it was open for visitors. And she asks if he isn't curious. If you don't go in while you're studying here, you might never get the chance in your life. Serrano replies bluntly that he's the type who could go his whole life without going in. She protests that it would be a waste and asks if going on to a Meiji-era ship doesn't excite him, that it seems like an adventure. And then Serrano goes quiet because he realizes something about himself. If it were up to him, even if he wanted to, he'd just keep wishing and never actually do it. He would give up at the very first obstacle. At that moment when you have to figure out how to get into a place like that, it wouldn't even get as far as asking at the front desk. And he realizes with a kind of painful admiration that this has nothing to do with being able to see or not. Fuyutsuki is amazing. She's an incredible person. So he says he'll go with her. Already inside the ship, Serrano is amazed that a ship like that even existed in the past, but inside there are a lot of steps, a lot of obstacles for her. So he does the only thing he can do. Despite it. Then she asks to go to the bow. He tells her to be careful, and when she gets to the tip, with the wind blowing, she says it almost feels like she's really sailing. He asks if she's satisfied, and she replies with another question. What does the landscape look like from there? And Serrano describes it yet. He talks about the yellow rod that sticks out from the bow called grupus. On the right side, you can see the sea. On the left, the university's trees swaying in the wind. And at that time of day, there's no one walking around there. And Fuyutsuki closes her eyes and says it's wonderful, that she's sure it's a wonderful place. Serrano admits that he was also surprised that a place like that existed inside the university. She thanks him, says it was really nice to be able to come in. He says he had a great experience, and she says she's relieved. She would have felt bad if only she had enjoyed herself, and just as the two of them were about to leave, she remembers something. She stretches out both arms there on the ship,
feeling the wind, and asks Serrano if he's ever seen a movie called Titanic. He says he thinks so, back in middle school when it was on TV. She says she watched it too, and that back then she could still see. Then she calls him over and asks if he wants to pretend they're on the Titanic with her. Serrano freaks out, arguing that people usually do that at the Bow, and she says they can't because before they boarded the ship, the person at the front desk warned them that hanging over the railings is dangerous and absolutely not allowed. He tries to get out of it by saying it doesn't have to be there, and she shuts down the discussion with a line that disarms anyone. It's all right, because since she can't see, it doesn't matter where it is. It can be right here. She can picture it perfectly in her head. Cornered, he tries one last move and asks if, in this pretend game, she's going to be Rose and he's going to be Jack. And she's super excited, goes along with it, and even promises to sing the theme song to liven things up. And Serrano realizes the mess he's gotten himself into. She spreads her arms, just like in the scene, and walks backward to get into position. But she can't see where she's stepping, and she falls backward, eyes closed. He grabs her at the last second before she hits the deck. And the two of them end up sitting right there on the wooden floor, both of their hearts racing. She apologizes, embarrassed, saying she made a weird sound at the moment, and he, even more embarrassed, says he's the one who should be apologizing. And there goes Fuyutsuki, still on the floor, lamenting that if she had held on just a little longer, she could have pretended she was on the Titanic. And Serrano lets out a breath. That was a close one. That night, Serrano wakes up shouting that he's flying, and Darumi in the bed next to him asks if he woke him up, and Serrano just lies there, tossing and turning, unable to find what he's looking for, wondering if that dream was also the effect of the suspension bridge and if it was all because of that adventure on the ship. The next day, the sky opens up with rain, and on his way to class, under his umbrella, Serrano spots a figure on the bridge. It's her, walking alone in the rain, with a cane in one hand and an umbrella in the other. He runs over, calls out to her, and asks if she's okay. She recognizes his voice and wants to know what he's doing there, and she says she was just taking a walk in the middle of all that rain. And then she explains the real reason. She wants to do everything she can on her own. Serrano looks at her two occupied hands and offers to help. He holds the umbrella for her. She hesitates, and he argues that he's already there anyway. She thanks him. And the two of them keep walking together under the same umbrella. She comments that he's very kind, and he immediately denies it, all embarrassed, saying it just happened that he saw her walking by with both hands full. The silence of the rain takes over, and Serrano tries to fill it. He suggests they go in through the main gate and cut through the first building, but Fuyutsuki calls his name and asks, what if they started calling each other by their first names? Serrano almost drops the umbrella, and she explains they've known each other for a month now, and he's so kind, always helping her out. She suggests it could be a nickname and tries out Koharum, and he totally panics, says there's no way that he can only call her by her last name. Then she apologizes, saying she's not holding the umbrella properly. He stops, looks at her, and she quietly asks if the two of them fit comfortably under that umbrella. And he answers yes. And then, with the rain falling around them, Fuyutsuki wraps up the conversation in her own way. She says he can keep calling her Fuyutsuki like always. He agrees, but asks if she can call him Kakeru, and he says she can. She expresses her gratitude to him and addresses him by his actual name for the first time, inviting him to keep walking.
On a morning like any other, there are Kakeru and Koharu hanging out by their usual vending machine. But this time, the machine just refuses to accept the drink Koharu always picks. Noticing the problem, Kakeru quickly offers to help out. But instead of accepting the help, Koharu just presses a random button in the dark and says she decided to be a little more adventurous that day. That move totally catches Kakeru off guard. After that, he heads to their usual table on the rooftop. That's when it hits him that spending that time by her side has already become an official part of his routine. Little while later, Koharu shows up with a can in her hand. She takes a shy sip and immediately makes a face, admitting that she just can't drink soda at all. Not wanting to waste it, she asks Kakeru to finish the drink for her. Feel the drama. He hesitates for a second since it's the same cup, but ends up agreeing. Right after that, Ushio and Yuko show up. Ushio says he ran into Yuko after class and thought it would be a good idea for the four of them to hang out together. Koharu jumps at the chance to suggest karaoke, Yuko mentions that her friend has always wanted to try it, and Ushio immediately gets on board, totally excited. While the group looks for a place, Kakeru is already getting super nervous about the possibility of having to sing. Yuko is the first one to grab the microphone, and she immediately impresses everyone. When Koharu asks for Kakeru's opinion, he compliments his friend's voice, even though, in reality, he was way more worried about the fact that he was sitting right next to Koharu. Then it's Ushio's turn to sing, leaving Kakeru stunned once again. When they're done, Koharu calls Kakeru up to sing. He tries to stall in every way and asks her to go first. Only then does he realize that Koharu can't pick a song by herself on the screen. Yuko gives her a hand, and Koharu picks a song about fireworks, which is one of her favorites. That's when the moment shines. As soon as she starts singing, the whole room falls completely silent. Her voice enchants everyone there, and when the song ends, the applause comes in full force. With a smile on her face, Koharu hands the microphone to Kakeru. He tries to get out of it because he knows very well that he sings terribly, but he ends up giving in to the pressure. Without thinking too much, he picks a really simple song. The problem is, he picked a love song. As soon as he starts singing, Kakeru realizes his voice is even worse than he remembered. Seeing how desperate he is, Ushio and Yuko start playing the plastic karaoke instruments to give him a boost. Then Koharu quietly says that she knows the song too, and starts singing a duet with him. Her calm voice makes Kakeru relax instantly. Little by little, he forgets his embarrassment and really starts enjoying that moment with his friends. Kakeru and Koharu are back at their usual spot. After a good few minutes in silence, Koharu asks if he's still there. Kakeru jokes that he was camouflaging his own presence, making her laugh heartily. While Koharu goes back to her reading, Kakeru notices how they become great friends and how much he enjoys her company. Full of curiosity, he asks what she's reading. Koharu just lifts the book toward him and calmly says that the title is written on the cover. Kakeru smiles and reminds her of a small detail: he can't read Braille. She bursts out laughing and explains that the book is The Diary of Anne Frank. Kakeru pretends to know the book inside out, which gets Koharu all excited, but he soon gives up and admits he's never read it. Then he asks her, does she like the story? Koharu answers with a smile that she likes a lot of things about that book. She says that reading always gives her motivation to keep doing her best, and that there's a passage that's her favorite. She also says that reading in Braille got easier with practice, and the thing is, even though she could listen to audiobooks, she still prefers to feel the pages with her own hands. Then she hands the book to Kakeru and invites her friend to try reading a little. Kakeru flips through the books, pretending he understands any of it. After a little while, he finds a bookmark and asks what's written on it. Koharu smiles and says she made the bookmark herself. Her hope is that one day Kakeru will learn Braille just so he can read that message. Playing along, he replies that he'll read it the day he feels like learning Braille. That answer makes Koharu pout in dissatisfaction right away. Right after that, she changes the subject and asks if he likes fireworks. Kakeru laughs and comments that she's already asked him that before. Then he says he was born in Shimonoseki, the city with one of the most famous fireworks festivals in Japan. He remembers that his parents used to take him there when he was a kid, but since he was really short and the crowd was huge, he almost never managed to see the lights in the sky. That ending to the story is unexpected and makes Koharu laugh, since she was expecting something way more exciting. Kakeru tries to explain himself by saying that it's totally normal for it to be packed since the festival is one of the best in the country. Hearing that, Koharu admits that she would love to experience that someday. Kakeru warns her that the place gets completely packed with people, but she replies that that's exactly the charm of these festivals. She explains that the fireworks are so beautiful that they have the power to make thousands of people stop at the same time just to admire the sky. While listening to his friend talk, Kakeru finds himself wondering what the world must look like through her eyes. No matter how much time they spend together, Koharu always finds a way to surprise him. Then curiosity gets the best of him and he asks how she managed to make that bookmark. Koharu explains that she used a special printer, one made for Braille. As Kakeru runs his fingers over the raised dots on the paper, he's really impressed by how easily blind people can identify each of those little bumps. Then out of nowhere, the conversation gets deep. Koharu asks if he's ever made a list of things he'd like to do before he dies. After thinking for a bit, Kakeru says he'd like to win the lottery and spend his days reading in the comfort of his home. But then he realizes that this sounds much more like a distant dream than an actual list of goals. That's when Koharu calmly comments that anyone can leave this world at any moment. That answer catches Kakeru completely off guard, and as if it were a scene from a movie, at that exact moment a strong gust of wind blows and carries away the bookmark. Kakeru runs after the paper, but the bookmark ends up flying over the roof of the neighboring building. It's gone. Unable to get it back, he comes back really down and apologizes 1,000 times for losing the gift. Koharu just smiles and tells her friend not to worry because she already knew the message by heart. As if nothing had happened, she changes the subject and asks if Kakeru knows about the fireworks research club at the university. On campus, there's a small pier that people call a lake, and Kakeru always thought it was there because of the navigation course crowd. Without even realizing it, he ends up following Koharu there, telling himself that he's only doing it because he still feels guilty about the missing bookmark. On the way, Koharu confides that she doesn't always want to depend only on Yuko. And at that moment, Yuko was probably working her shift at a cafe. With a smile, she says that her friend is super friendly and always carries a nice coffee scent with her. When they finally arrive at the club building, Koharu asks Kakeru to describe what the place looks like. He replies that the building's amazing, but he's really just putting on a front. The truth is, the place looks pretty old and run down. That polite answer ends up amusing Koharu quite a bit. Then, finally being honest, Kakeru admits that the place looks way more like an abandoned warehouse than an actual club. The whole vibe seems pretty sketchy, but even so, Koharu asks him to knock on the door. Kakeru knocks, but there's no answer. When the two are already about to leave, a guy named Yuichi shows up, and then comes the surprise. They find out that Yuichi is the club president and also its only member. Curious about the pair, Yuichi asks why they're visiting. When he finds out that Koharu's blind, he comments that it's the first time he's met someone with a visual impairment who likes fireworks, but then he realizes that listening to fireworks is still a cool way to enjoy the moment. Koharu gets straight to the point and asks if the club is really allowed to set off fireworks inside the university. She says she heard fireworks near the campus some time ago and reveals that she dreams of setting off fireworks with her own hands. Her request catches Yuichi off guard. The mood turns more serious. He explains that handling fireworks is dangerous and raises his arm, revealing several burn scars. As we know, only Kakeru can see those marks. Realizing that Koharu couldn't understand the visual gesture, Yuichi simply gives up on explaining and goes into the shed, leaving her completely confused. On the way back, Koharu asks if something happened there that she couldn't pick up on. Kakeru comes clean and explains that Yuichi was showing scars on his arms. She feels a little sad about that.
She comments that he could have found another way to explain the situation instead of just giving up. That's when Kakeru notices how most people rely so much on sight that they end up forgetting there are other ways to communicate. Even so, Koharu quietly says that her dream of setting off fireworks someday is still alive. Then she looks in Kakeru's direction, smiles, and suggests that the two of them do it together. He refuses right away, but Koharu insists and says she heard about a store specializing in fireworks over in Asakusabashi. With a mischievous smile, she reminds them that Kakeru still owes her a huge favor for losing her bookmark. Completely out of options, he asks when the two of them are going to make this visit. Seeing that she managed to convince her friend, Koharu smiles, totally satisfied with her victory. Later that night, Kakeru keeps pacing back and forth in his own room. Since they agreed to visit the store the very next day, he even starts thinking about what clothes he's going to wear. Right at that moment, his phone rings. When he sees Koharu's name on the screen, he answers in a flash, thinking maybe something had happened. On the other end of the line, there's a few seconds of silence. After this suspense, she explains that she only called because she forgot to set the time and place for their meeting. She also admits that out of nowhere, she got nervous. Kakeru thinks it's really strange, since the two of them talk almost every day. Koharu replies that talking on the phone is very different, and it actually makes her feel a lot more embarrassed. Just imagining Koharu blushing on the other end of the line, Kakeru realizes he's gotten all flustered too. Trying to lighten the mood, he jokes that he's embarrassed too, and suggests they just set the time already. Then he offers her a ride to her apartment. Koharu immediately refuses, saying that would totally ruin the mood of the date. As soon as she realizes the word she used, she gets completely flustered. Kakeru tries to fix it,
saying it's not a date, they're just going shopping. But Kakeru quickly replies that going out together like this is exactly what people call a date. Unable to hide her panic and embarrassment, she quickly gives the time and place where they'll meet and hangs up. As soon as he hears the call end, Kakeru throws himself onto the bed, covers his face with his hands, and realizes he just can't stop blushing.
And that so-called date that Kakeru swore wasn't a date has finally arrived, and the body gives away what the mouth denies. On the morning of the big day, the guy took an extra careful shower well before it was time to see Kakeru, and the roomie, his roommate, didn't let it slide. Narumi teases him mercilessly. A shower before meeting a girl, and with that innocent face? He even says he's jealous. Kakeru gets flustered, swearing that Kakeru just asked him to go with her. Then Narumi finds his weak spot and calls Kakeru a wimp about 10 times in a row just to watch his friend get riled up. That's the power of a well-timed nickname. It got to him so much that on the way to the date, Kakeru suddenly had a crazy craving for chicken. But not everything in that conversation was just joking around. In the middle of all the teasing, Narumi threw a serious question on the table. Deep down, didn't Kakeru want to date Kakeru? And Kakeru dodged the question right away. He said they just talk, that he never really thought about it before. But the real problem, he ends up admitting, is something else, and it goes deeper. He doesn't know how to act when it comes to her blindness, and he has zero confidence that he's as good at it as Narumi is. And then he opens up about what's been bothering him. He doesn't know what it means to treat a blind person normally. Should he bring up the topic of her vision, offer his hand, or ask her anything he wants? Every time, he freezes up, afraid things will get awkward. Narumi, who's been through this, gives crucial advice. Worse than asking questions is distancing yourselves. Kakeru heads to the meeting spot and does the first right thing. He calls Kakeru by name and speaks up, as she won't recognize him from afar. He apologizes for being late, and Kakeru, clever as ever, jokes that she's been standing there waiting for 2 hours. Kakeru almost falls for it completely, even starts to feel guilty, until she laughs and admits she was just messing with him. Then comes the first cute stuggle. Kakeru points and says, "It's this way." And Kakeru, of course, asks, "This way where?" It dawns on him that just pointing his finger doesn't help at all. He corrects himself, "To your left-hand side." And he starts to notice that no matter how much he looks at her, waiting for her to catch on, she just doesn't get it. And Narumi's question keeps echoing in his head. He admits, a bit embarrassed, a harsh truth. Dating a blind person always seemed way too complicated, and that's why he had never seen Kakeru as a potential girlfriend. He knows how ugly that is to even think, but Kakeru doesn't let the mood get heavy at all. She's way too excited, overflowing, and out of nowhere she starts skipping down the sidewalk, as happy as a kid who just got the present they wanted most. And she even challenges Kakeru. Can he skip with his eyes closed like she does? He tries, but freezes on the very first jump and bursts out laughing. His laughter seems odd. She didn't see what happened, only hearing it. He apologizes, admitting he can't do it. To make the transfers easier, Kakeru had chosen to take the subway, and it's in the train car that he comes face to face with an unpleasant reality in Kakeru's life. Even though she's walking with her cane, clearly visible, no one there gets up to offer her a seat. Kakeru swallows his frustration and takes charge. He finds an empty spot to the right and leads her there. She thanks him, calling him a gentleman for finding a quieter area. He awkwardly denies it, feeling it wasn't kindness, but simply the obvious thing to do. And then comes the topic that runs through the whole series, fireworks. Kakeru asks why she wants so badly to set off fireworks if she can't see the lights, and Kakeru's answer is a lesson in itself. We don't enjoy fireworks just with our eyes. You hear the boom exploding up above, smell the gunpowder, and listen to everyone letting out that "ah" all at once. And she teaches Kakeru to close his eyes and enjoy it with his whole body. He, more down to earth, says he's already happy just holding a sparkler in his hand. And then she shares where that desire comes from. And this is where your heart tightens. When she was a child and could still see, she used to go watch the fireworks with her family. But that strong, almost stubborn urge to set off fireworks with her own hands only showed up after she lost her sight. Kakeru doesn't get what she means, so she explains it in her own way. It's a desire to push herself, to be able to do something on her own, to not just sit and listen to others talk about how it was. The train car starts to fill up and Kakeru stands in front of her, acting as a shield. Kakeru notices and thanks him for protecting her. But the part that really hurts comes out on the street. A distracted guy, glued to his phone, bumps into Kakeru and just keeps walking, pretending nothing happened. Kakeru gets heated and is about to confront the guy, but it's Kakeru who stops him by grabbing his shirt sleeve. She says it's okay, that this kind of thing happens all the time, that maybe the guy got an important message and asks him not to get so upset.
Kakeru takes a deep breath and swallows his anger. To cool off, they stop at a cafe. And guess who comes to serve them? It's Yuko, that friend who's always popping up in the story, working there. She recognizes the couple and teases them. "You and Koharu, huh?" Kakeru, blushing, hurriedly blurts out their warner. And Yuko even invites herself along for the fireworks plan. Yuko doesn't miss a chance to dig a little deeper. When did those two get so close anyway? Koharu accidentally spills the beans, saying that Kakeru was all smiles, which surprises Yuko, who was convinced that guy was always grumpy. Then Koharu comes up with a pretty risky idea. She asks if she can touch Kakeru's face so she can feel with her hand the smile she can't see with her eyes. Kakeru immediately refuses, blushing all the way to the tips of his ears. When it's time to order, a delicate moment, one of those everyday things that sighted people don't even think about, Koharu lets him know she can't see the menu. There's a slightly awkward second, that uncomfortable silence, until Kakeru catches on and starts reading the options out loud to her. Kakeru even helps her find the cup on the table and carefully warns her that it's hot. It didn't help. She takes the first sip anyway, burns herself a little, and makes one of those cute faces people make when they're in a hurry. Kakeru almost lets out a laugh, and here, the anime drops the most beautiful line that crosses Kakeru's mind. He notices that Koharu's eyes never really meet his. They'll never cross. But even so, every now and then, it feels like the two of them looked at each other. And every time that illusion happens, Kakeru's heart races and he feels a sweet, nervous tightness in his chest. The atmosphere between the two of them keeps getting lighter and lighter. He offers her a bite of his snack and she teases him, mischievously asking if he's going to feed her directly. He immediately says no, dying of embarrassment, and she even calls him stingy. Then she brings up something more serious, saying she doesn't really like people watching her eat. Kakeru, trying to be nice, says he heard that a lot of girls feel that way. And Koharu smiles and says something that completely disarms the guy. She says that Kakeru treating her like a girl just normally, without walking on eggshells, makes it really happy. Kakeru was left speechless. That smile, he thinks, is pure mischief. And it's after this that Kakeru finally gets up the courage to ask the question that's been stuck in his throat the whole episode. With all the care in the world, letting her know she doesn't have to answer if she doesn't want to, he asks, what does she see since she can't see? Is it total darkness, complete blackness? And Koharu's answer is the beating heart of this anime. She says that people always imagine it's all black, an endless void. But for her, it's exactly the opposite. For her, it's like being inside a translucent, almost white, luminous fog. And it's precisely from there, from this transparent night, that the story gets its name. After their coffee, the two finally find the shop that specializes only in fireworks. Koharu is enchanted just by hearing about the size and variety of things in the place, and she asks, curious, what kinds of fireworks they have there. And Kakeru once again becomes her eyes. He starts describing the shells one by one. The ones that shoot up into the sky are on the right. The most popular ones are the multi-shot fireworks, which range from 10 to 30 shots. And since they're going for it, the two of them pick the biggest one of all, the 30-shot firework. Then he describes the whistle fireworks, the ones that go up making a phew sound and explode with a bam, and Koharu really wants those no matter what. Kakeru continues the tour. Spark fireworks, smoke fireworks, light fireworks. Koharu wants everything, and striking a pose reminds him that the budget is 1 million yen, because you can't underestimate the Fuzatushi conglomerate, and asks Kakeru to carry the bags. With the shopping done, Kakeru asks what she wants to do now, and then it just slips out of his mouth. He asks if she wants to keep going with the bait. Koharu quickly teases him. So it's not a date then? And he quickly cuts her off with a just kidding. But the bags full of fireworks are actually heavy, so he suggests they head back home. And Koharu, in her own way, jokes that if the two of them go around carrying that much fire, the police will stop them for possession of dangerous materials. And Kakeru immediately fires back that in this story, she's the mastermind behind all the chaos. Without realizing it, Kakeru starts to notice something. Making Koharu laugh is becoming more and more fun for him. On the way back, it's Koharu who comes up with the idea. She wants to take the water bus. And Kakeru was totally on board with the idea right away. He even remembers, feeling a bit nostalgic, that back in his hometown there was a ferry that went to Mojiko, just like the water bus here, which runs along the Sumida River, passes through Asakusa, and goes all the way to Tokyo Bay. And inside, silently, Kakeru now thinks like her, that even without sight, you can enjoy the boat by hearing the water and feeling the breeze. Kakeru describes everything to it. The first floor, which is an enclosed cabin, and the second, which is an open deck up top. Koharu wants the deck, of course. But there's a problem. The stairs to the deck are narrow and the boat rocks on the water. It's dangerous. So, without any fuss, Kakeru does what needs to be done. He reaches out his hand and asks for hers. And when their hands meet, Kakeru notices something she had already noticed once before, the first time he touched her. Kakeru's hands are really warm. Up there, with the wind on her face, Kakeru was beaming. She says she never imagined he would do all that for her. And Kakeru almost blurts out that he'd always be available to go out with her whenever she wanted, but he swallows the words in surprise at the very last second. Inside, he finds himself with a new question. If it's with Kakeru, would he actually not mind getting more involved, letting down all those walls he's always kept up? And he comes to a rare moment of honesty. He still doesn't know the answer himself. Then she asks if the view was beautiful. She had noticed that Kakeru got really quiet for a while and figured he must have been admiring the scenery. She can't see, but says she's having fun anyway, and shares that from when she could still see, she remembers this same place, only on a cloudy day. And Kakeru does the most beautiful thing in the whole episode. He describes today to her in detail. He says the weather's clear, the sky's blue, that blue is reflected in the river, and that everything looks really beautiful. Kakeru thanks him, sincerely, for telling her all that. And Kakeru, with a half smile, jokes that today he finally earned that so-called kindness license, level 2. And then comes the moment that says everything without a single word. The boat glides over the water, music fills the scene, and Kakeru quietly turns just to look at Kakeru beside him. The afternoon sun shines on her face, the wind plays with her hair, and the boy just stands there, frozen, unable to react, simply admiring her. It's as if, in that suspended moment, this girl quietly slipped into his life and let a sliver of light into that closed-off world. That dark little room Kakeru always kept locked up inside is the exact scene where the love-struck person finally realizes what's happening. And the best part? He doesn't have to say a thing. At the end of it all, with the wind blowing strong and pleasantly on the deck, Kakeru turns to him and thanks him for bringing her there. And Kakeru, who spent the whole day swearing up and down that this wasn't a date, quietly replies, almost so only he can hear, that actually, he's the one who should be thankful. And that's exactly how it happened, without either of them having the courage to say it out loud that the first date of their lives took place.
After the date, Kakeru returns home and, out of pure habit, turns on the light as soon as she enters her room. She changes her clothes, puts on something more comfortable, and remains blissfully happy about everything that happened that day. Shortly after, she hears her mother calling her for dinner and leaves the room. At the table, her mother, Haruka, serves the food and explains where each dish is so Kakeru can eat on her own. Even so, a bit of food ends up on the corner of her mouth, and Haruka wipes it away with great care. Deep down, Kakeru always feels self-conscious, thinking she makes a mess when she eats. And that was exactly why she avoided eating in front of Kakeru. Her mother smiles and remarks that the date must have been really good because she noticed her daughter put much more effort into her look than usual. Thinking about it, Kakeru realizes her mother is right. She really put effort into her outfit and makeup because she wanted to show an even better version of herself to Kakeru. And just imagining that he might have liked how she looked makes her melt. And she admits that she loved the date. After dinner, she goes back to her room and turns the light on again, that habit that continues to be part of her routine. And she starts to think about how her blindness has always influenced the way people treat her. Maybe that's why she's never been able to make many friends. Even so, she is grateful for the effort Kakeru makes to understand her. She remembers how careful he was when asking about her blindness. It was the first time someone had asked her that directly, so she explained everything calmly. And when he reacted with a little sound of surprise, Kakeru thought it was cute. She imagined he was being considerate of her feelings, and she liked him even more. Reliving that day, Kakeru thinks that many people believe being blind must be incredibly difficult, but she thinks that's only because they've never spent time with someone in that condition. For her, it's just part of life, and it seems like the most normal thing in the world. She remembers how devastated she was when she found out she would one day lose her sight completely. But over time, she learned to cope with the disability and went back to doing practically everything she did before, just in a different way. She is also able to live like any other girl her age, thanks to the adaptations made for people with disabilities. She knows there are still things she can't do, but she believes she'll be able to handle those challenges too. She learned to ask for help when she needs it, and, at the same time, strengthened her desire to be increasingly independent, so as not to worry others. Thinking about the boat trip, she remembers how Kakeru described the entire landscape just with words, letting her imagine every detail. She liked his attentive nature and, little by little, ended up falling in love with the warmth of his hands and the softness of his voice. She also remembers the joke he made during the trip. Pretending to be scared, Kakeru said they were approaching a very low bridge and that they needed to duck their heads so they wouldn't hit them. Trusting him completely, Koharu ducked and waited for him to tell her she could lift her head back up. But laughing, Kakeru revealed that the bridge was never low enough for that. Instead of getting mad, Koharu burst out laughing, imagining how funny she must have looked. And in that moment, she felt an overwhelming desire to see his face. She knows that even if she could still see, she would fall in love with Kakeru all over again. Koharu knows she's in love, but she's afraid to tell him how she feels. Deep down, she feels insecure, not knowing if he would accept dating someone with a disability. She knows Kakeru isn't the type of person who would judge someone for that, but that thought keeps bothering her heart. Returning to the end of that outing, Koharu realizes they are reaching their destination when she smells the salty air of Tokyo Bay. Kakeru comments that the campus isn't in sight yet, but he thinks she might be right. Suddenly, the boat rocks and Kakeru catches her just before she falls. After reassuring him, saying that everything was fine, Koharu tells him how happy that day made her. And looking back on everything, she wonders if she would have the courage to confess her feelings if she could still see. In the end, she concludes that she would probably still be afraid because confessing one's own feelings is always scary. Even so, she smiles as she realizes that she can still experience a great love even though she is blind. But soon, insecurity returns when she thinks about Kakeru's feelings. She has no idea what he feels since he never takes the initiative to send a message. Little by little, the fear of being rejected again takes hold of her. And finding it strange to feel so much happiness and so much pain at the same time, she ends up falling asleep in tears. The next morning, Kakeru, Ushio, and other students participate in the mandatory rowing practice for dormitory students. Koharu and Yuko are also there, but they sit in the back of the boat because they don't live in the dormitory. While rowing, Kakeru remembers that the training serves as preparation for the school festival, where one of the attractions is precisely a boat ride conducted by the students. When the festival arrives, Koharu and Yuko decide to try out the attraction. The two start cheering for Kakeru during the ride, and the boy gets a bit embarrassed. Some water splashes hit Koharu's face. Yuko gets worried, but she assures him she's having too much fun and keeps cheering. Seeing her so happy makes Kakeru unable to take his eyes off her. Ushio blurts out that the sea represents a man's true romance, and soon the boat speeds up because the guys start rowing with much more strength.
In the middle of the conversation, Kakeru jokes that when the festival's over, he's going to drop out of college, go back to his hometown, and become a farmer. Realizing that Koharu was shaken, Yuko quickly explains that he's just kidding. Shortly after, Yuko becomes strangely quiet. Kakeru tries to ask if she's okay, but he can barely be heard over the guys shouting. After insisting a few times, Yuko admits she got seasick because of the boat. Kakeru calls the teacher, and everyone is ordered to stop rowing while she recovers. Ushio apologizes for getting too carried away with the excitement. To change the subject, Koharu mentions that the festival's closing ceremony will have a fireworks display. Then, Yuko asks Kakeru to keep Koharu company later, since she'll need to take care of the organizing committee's tasks, and Ushio will also have to go to work. Even imagining that everyone will be sore after the effort, Kakeru asks Koharu to wait for him on the terrace when everything is over. Before leaving, he reminds her that the two of them still need to set off the fireworks they bought together. Koharu comments that if she had known about the festival's giant fireworks display, she wouldn't have bought so many. After finishing the entire rowing session, Kakeru goes up to the terrace to meet Koharu. Even though he's completely exhausted and his body's sore, he realizes he's looking forward to seeing her. As he walks, he even wonders at what point he started to get so happy, just knowing he was gonna meet her. When he arrives, he finds Koharu in their usual spot drinking her favorite beverage. Just seeing her makes his heart race. He approaches, apologizes for making her wait, and offers to get her another drink. At that moment, they both hear Yuko's voice announcing something on the main stage. Kakeru asks if Kakeru is still there, since she didn't hear his response. He makes a joke, she pouts for a few seconds, but soon they both end up laughing together. Kakeru comments that Yuko is hosting the event and still managing several committee tasks at the same time. He admits that he could never do so much at once. Then they start talking about the Yukata contest, the festival's final attraction. Koharu would love to wear a yukata someday, and Kakeru suggests she enter the contest, saying with total confidence that she would definitely take first place. But the mood shifts when Koharu asks if he would really vote for her if she participated. Kakeru answers right away that he would. Then she drops another question, would he really vote for her even though she's blind? At first, Kakeru says that being able to see or not has nothing to do with the contest, but he soon realizes that her insecurity runs much deeper, so he reinforces that her blindness would never change his choice. Koharu blushes and comments that it sounded almost like a declaration of love, and now it's Kakeru who turns completely red, trying desperately to deny it. In the middle of his nervousness, he almost lets slip how he really feels, but quickly changes the subject, remembering that she loves fireworks. Kakeru smiles and says she's looking forward to lighting the fireworks we bought together. They both comment that they're still just sitting in a corner of Kakeru's room. She jokes that the school should have announced the fireworks display right at the opening ceremony. Shortly after, the wind shifts and they realize it's gonna rain. As they listen to Yuko announce the winners of the Yukata contest, Kakeru feels the first drops falling, and Koharu remarks that she can smell the rain. Soon a downpour breaks out and the students run off in search of shelter. Kakeru and Kohara hide under a staircase while Yuko announces that the fireworks display has been cancelled due to bad weather. Noticing that Koharu has started sneezing and is probably cold, Kakeru suggests they rest for a bit in his dorm, and feeling a bit awkward, asks if he can hold her hand to guide her along the wet path. Koharu accepts, and the two head toward the dorm together.
With the festival fireworks canceled due to the rain, Kakeru is left with two options in his head. Stay there, waiting for the rain to pass, or take Kohara home in the downpour. He knows the right thing to do is take her home, but his heart really wanted to stay by her side a little longer. In the end, he decides to take Kohara to the dormitory for now so she doesn't catch a cold. Arriving at the room, he warns her that the space is a bit cramped and offers her the bed to sit on. Then he grabs a towel and hands it to her, and the two start drying themselves off from the rain. At that moment, Kohara lets out a somewhat awkward question. She wants to know if any part of her clothes became transparent from being so wet, and she moves her hair aside to make it easier. Kakeru gets all flustered because he knows she wants him to look at her clothes, but he ends up noticing the back of her neck instead. The clothes did get a little transparent, but he prefers not to comment, so he doesn't embarrass her. Instead, he puts another towel over Koharu's shoulders and says everything is fine, that nothing is transparent, but that she should warm up. The atmosphere gets a bit heavy, and Kakeru admits to himself that it's the first time he's been alone with a girl like that, so he's super nervous. To break the ice, Koharu asks if that's really his room. He confirms that yes, he shares it with Narumi and that that's his bed. All happy, she decides to lie down, without realizing that her skirt ended up in a somewhat compromising position. Kakeru warns her quickly, and she sits back up, covering her legs. He swears he didn't see anything, but Koharu takes the opportunity to tease him with a lament full of double meanings. Kakeru misunderstands everything and thinks she's joking about the clothing situation until he discovers that, in reality, she was actually sad because the fireworks show didn't happen. He turns red upon realizing the hasty conclusion he jumped to. To cheer her up, Kakeru guarantees that there will be fireworks again next year. Because it seems to be a festival tradition, Koharu comments that she would love to join the group responsible for setting off the fireworks, but thinks someone like her probably wouldn't be accepted. Without thinking twice, Kakeru offers to join with her. Koharu is surprised and asks if he's sure, and he says he doesn't mind at all. Shortly after, Koharu notices that the sound of the rain has died down. Kakeru looks out the window, confirms that it's just a drizzle now, and decides to take the opportunity to take her home. On the way, the scent of Koharu's shampoo mixes with the smell of the rain and stirs Kakeru a little. To distract himself, he starts reciting some prayers in his heart, but since they're too short, he moves on to reciting the decimal places of pi. But he only manages to get to the 8th decimal place, so it doesn't even last 5 seconds. Then he asks Kaharu what they're going to do with the fireworks they bought. The two agree to set them all off on a summer night, along with the others, since she has no problem going out after dark. After all, it was at a night party that they met, and they decide to invite Narumi and Hayase as well. After a little while, Kaharu asks another question, somewhat hesitantly. She wants to know if Kakeru has a girlfriend. When she finds out he's single, she lets out a relieved, "That's good," and he wonders why. Trying to hide her interest, Koharu says she was just worried because a potential girlfriend might misunderstand how close they are, especially since she's always given him a hard time. Kakeru interprets that as a possible confession that she likes him and jokes that she fell for a silly prank. Then Koharu squeezes his arm even tighter, completely embarrassed. When they arrive at the building, Kaharu asks if Kakeru knows how a blind person can recognize someone's face. She explains that it's by touching the person's face with their hands to memorize the features. Kakeru lets her do it. Koharu holds his face with both hands and asks him to lean down a bit, because he's too tall. As soon as he leans down, she finds his lips and kisses him. After a few moments, she pulls away and asks if he still thinks she's playing around. Then she goes into the apartment and says goodnight, leaving Kakeru completely in shock. He still feels the sweet scent of her lipstick on his own lips and realizes that was his first kiss. The next day, still trying to process everything, Kakeru decides to go out to dinner with Narumi to vent. Narumi takes him to a manjayaki restaurant, which surprises Kakeru because he thought people from Kansai didn't really like that dish, but rather okonomiyaki. Narumi explains that he is only half Kansai, since his mother is from Gunma, so he's a mix of Kansai and Kanto. At that moment, Kakeru sees Hayase through the window and gets startled when she walks into the restaurant. Narumi invites her to join them, as if it had all been planned. Kakeru tries to understand what's going on, but Narumi just says he'll figure it out on his own. Hayase watches Narumi preparing the manjayaki and asks exactly the same question Kakeru had asked. Narumi repeats the explanation about being half Kansai and half Kanto, and she bursts out laughing at his seriousness. When the food is ready, the three of them start eating, impressed with the result. While they eat, Hayase asks where Kakeru is from, and that sparks a conversation about weird foods from his region. As they continue eating, Kakeru can't relax. He went out with Narumi to talk about Kaharu, but with Hayase there, he's unsure how to bring it up. He decides to just keep eating to avoid thinking about it, despite his friends warning him he's already overdoing it. When they finish, it's Narumi himself who finally mentions Koharu. But at that moment, Kakeru is so full that he can barely speak. He asks for tea to help his stomach. When it arrives, he takes a few big gulps, realizing it's too bitter to be tea. The waitress realizes she served alcohol by mistake and quickly takes the glass away. But the damage was already done. Kakeru starts acting strange, and Narumi and Hase realize right away that the alcohol hit him. He becomes completely distracted and even starts laughing out of nowhere, which makes the two of them doubt that he'll be able to explain the problems properly. Even so, he insists that he can still talk and says he wants to talk about Kaharu. Narumi decides to just let it happen, thinking that maybe being a little tipsy might actually help his friend open up. He starts the conversation by asking how things are going between the two of them. And then for some reason, Kakeru gets completely serious and starts telling the whole story to Hayase and Narumi. In the end, he drops the bombshell, Koharu kissed him, which gets very different reactions from the two of them. Hayase, in particular, gets upset that he didn't take the initiative. She insists that he should have at least confessed his feelings or taken the opportunity to move the relationship forward. This turns into an argument because Kakeru wanted to be more careful because of Kaharu's blindness, while Hayase interprets that as an insult. Narumi tells the two of them to calm down, but the argument draws so much attention that the whole restaurant starts looking at their table, forcing him to apologize. When things calm down, Narumi asks Kakeru to continue the story. Kakeru explains that since Kaharu can't see, he keeps imagining that she might get scared if he just touches her out of nowhere. The last thing he wants is for her to feel scared or startled because of him. Suddenly, Hayase starts laughing out loud. She apologizes for getting it all wrong, but calls Kakeru too innocent for his age, and even Narumi starts laughing along. Kakeru accuses the two of them of making fun of him. They deny it, but keep laughing, making him more and more annoyed. After they finally manage to stop, Hayase asks why Kakeru became so interested in Koharu. To tease him, she jokes that it must be physical attraction, since Koharu is very pretty. Even though he says he won't tell, Kakeru ends up admitting that he admires Koharu mainly for her optimistic way of being. He explains that he tried to put himself in her shoes and realized that he probably wouldn't be as happy living in that situation.
To give an example, he talks about his parents' divorce and how much that shook him. He started worrying too much about how others saw him because he came from a broken home, which ended up giving him a very negative outlook on his own future. Koharu, on the other hand, despite her disability, manages to live in a much freer way than he does, and that is exactly what Kakeru admires. Spending time with her made him realize that he can also be happy, as long as he changes the way he views his own life. That was when he fell in love, realizing that what really matters is what's inside people. Hayase says she understands perfectly and also thinks Koharu is amazing. She mentions that even though she's blind, Koharu never uses that as an excuse to stop showing up or participating in things, and admits, a bit sheepishly, that she herself sometimes skips class just out of laziness. After hearing Kakeru talk so much about Koharu, Hayase feels she understands even better why he likes her, since she also admires that direct and sincere nature. Her words make Kakeru realize that the way Koharu lives her life really touches people in a way that's hard to explain, and that makes him like her even more. Narumi says that Kakeru should just confess his feelings, but he and Hayase realize that their friend is still hesitant, so the two start teasing him, poking at the idea that maybe it's too hard for him, until they manage to convince Kakeru to finally confess his feelings. Realizing that he's up for almost anything in that slightly tipsy state, Hayase suggests he practice the confession right there as a rehearsal, and even offers to record the whole thing on video. For some reason, Kakeru thinks that's a great idea. He stands up and announces loudly that he wants everyone's attention. When he realizes the whole restaurant is looking at him, it's already too late to back out. So he starts the confession. First, he tries to say his own name, but he gets all tongue-tied, and Narumi and Hayase point out the mistake right away, making him even more embarrassed. He tries again, and this time manages to say his name before finally declaring loud and clear that he loves Koharu Fuyuzuki. Then, still excited, he announces to everyone that he would really like to date her. The people around start cheering for him, while some tables take the opportunity to tease him. When he finally sits down, Hayase reveals, all smiles, that she has already sent the recording of the declaration to Koharu. When he realizes he just confessed in that completely embarrassing way, he starts squirming in his chair in disbelief, while his two friends burst into laughter. Even so, they assure him that Koharu will likely respond positively. Kakeru, half desperate, warns them that he will hold both of them personally responsible if she ends up rejecting him. The next day, Kakeru waits for Koharu at the usual spot. He really wanted to see her, especially since she hadn't replied to any of his messages since the day before. The days go by, but Koharu still doesn't reply.
On an ordinary day, Kakeru passes by the bridge where he used to meet Koharu when they went out together, but ends up turning back when he realizes she isn't there. It's been a week since he last heard from her, so he continues with his college routine as usual, just like he did before he even met her. Even with all the noise and chatter of the students scattered across campus, the silence feels much louder now that he spends his days alone. On Monday morning, during that same class he used to share with Koharu, Kakeru starts to get genuinely worried because she didn't show up in the classroom either. Ever since Hayase sent the video of his confession, no one in the group had been able to talk to Koharu or see her around campus. Because of that, they created a group chat to let each other know if anyone had any news. Everyone was trying to get in touch, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. After class, Kakeru goes to the rooftop where the two of them used to spend time, and once again, she isn't there. He tries to call, but no one answers. Even so, he decides to stick to his usual routine, even if alone, and starts remembering the days they spent there, talking about the silliest things and joking around with each other. Taking a sip of his drink, he remembers that Koharu can't have carbonated soda. For some reason, this silly memory makes him miss her even more, and especially her voice and her laughter. Without even realizing it, Kakeru finds himself falling in love with her all over again. Then he picks up his phone and sees that his last message hasn't even been read. He starts to think that maybe Kohara has finally decided to block him, and just imagining that makes his heart ache. He wonders if this is what they call a broken heart, but there's an even worse feeling bubbling inside him, as if something much more serious had happened. That's why he really wants to find Koharu and find out in person if she's okay. The last time he felt something like this was when his father simply abandoned the family without a trace. He feels terrible about all of it, as if someone were playing God and ripping the very people he loves most out of his life. Lost in these thoughts, Kakeru hears Hayase greet him, but her voice carries a different weight. When he looks, he notices the deep dark circles under her eyes. Hayase tries to keep smiling, but admits she isn't as strong as people imagine, and that deep down she is just as fragile as any girl her age. Seeing Kakeru alone, Hayase understands that no one in the group has managed to get any news about Koharu. She starts to blame herself, wondering if all of this happened because of the video she sent. Only now does she realize that it wasn't cool at all to mess with someone's confession, and she feels that maybe Koharu distanced herself because of her. Kakeru gives a gentle smile and realizes that Hayase isn't used to seeing someone simply disappear from her life, so she must be feeling this guilt even more heavily. In his case, it's more shock than guilt, but he admits to himself that the pain of losing someone is enormous and that he just wants to see Koharu again. To try to lighten the mood between them, Kakeru brings up classes and college assignments. He even promises to buy Hayase some drinks if she shares her notes with him. In the middle of their conversation, the two hear Narumi shouting and see him running toward them. When he finally arrives, Narumi is out of breath, as if he had just run a marathon. After catching his breath, he drops the bombshell. He just saw Koharu entering a huge hospital in another city and ran all the way back to warn him. That leaves Kakeru completely shocked, and he starts to fear that his suspicion that something was very wrong with Koharu might actually be true. He and Hayase decide to head to the location immediately. Unfortunately, Narumi can't go with them because he has class right after, but the two of them rush off anyway. While they are running toward the hospital, Hayase trips and realizes she hurt her foot. She tells Kakeru to go on without her, that she'll catch up later, because she doesn't want to hold him up. Kakeru keeps jogging ahead, knowing that if they take any longer, he might lose the chance to find Koharu. After a while, he starts running for real, since the hospital is in another city, quite far from the university. Kakeru rushes through several streets and cars without even thinking about stopping to rest, because at that moment, every second counts. But all the exhaustion vanishes the instant he finally spots the hospital ahead. When he enters, Kakeru looks around and finds someone at the reception who might be able to help. He goes to the counter trying to catch his breath and, between gasps, asks if Koharu is admitted there as a patient. The receptionist, however, explains that the hospital cannot provide information about patients. So he walks away from the reception and starts wandering through the hospital looking for any sign of Koharu. He already knows that no staff member will be able to help. After all, he isn't related to her. Kakeru notices that patients are being called for appointments and decides to wait to see if Koharu's name would be announced. To his disappointment, the hospital only calls patients by their number, not their name. While he sits down and tries to think of the next step, he receives a message from Hayase saying she just arrived. Shortly after, she appears and says she managed to get there by taxi. The two talk and conclude that the reception won't be of any help because of the rules. Therefore, they will have to look for Koharu on their own. Hayase decides to start with the old hospital building, while Kakeru is responsible for the main building. Kakeru looks at the hospital map and tries to imagine which ward Koharu could be in. He decides to go up to the ophthalmology ward and start searching there. However, up to that point, he doesn't find her in any hallway or room. Since she isn't there, he decides to look on the other floors, carefully checking each ward until, at one point, he arrives at what appears to be a garden on one of the hospital's terraces. Kakeru notices that Hayase also hasn't sent any updates and begins to fear that, in the end, this whole search won't lead anywhere. He reaches the other side of the garden and enters the building again. As soon as he goes through the door, he hears some soft piano notes. Curious, he decides to follow the sound and soon realizes that there are children singing along. The closer he gets, the much clearer the music becomes. When he peeks through the door of a room, Kakeru finally sees Koharu playing the piano, surrounded by several children. The scene leaves him confused, especially because there are several parents waiting outside. Even so, he decides not to worry about that right now. What really matters is that Koharu is there and seems to be doing well. The relief is so great that tears start streaming down his face. While Koharu continues entertaining the children, he quickly sends a message to Hayase saying that he found her, that she's in the hospital's playroom playing the piano. It doesn't take long for Hayase to arrive, and as soon as she sees the scene, she also starts to cry, completely relieved to find out that Koharu is okay. The two of them just stand there watching through the little window in the door. Instead of interrupting, they decide to wait outside until she finishes entertaining the children. After a while, Kakeru notices that the kids are already leaving the room, so he and Hayase position themselves near the door so they can talk to Koharu. When he sees Koharu coming out, Kakeru freezes for a moment, not knowing what to say. She walks right past him, and in desperation, he calls out her name. Koharu stops, and Kakeru takes that as a sign that at least she recognized his voice. But there's something very strange about her movements. He tries to say who he is and even repeats some of the jokes they used to make, hoping she'll play along, but there's no sign of affection or familiarity in Koharu's gestures. She doesn't smile, she doesn't react the way she used to when she talked to him. Instead, she just agrees to talk and even seems afraid of the situation. Kakeru then takes her to the garden so they can talk in a quieter place. Even there, Koharu seems reluctant to accept any kind of help from the two of them, and Kakeru notices this and becomes even more worried. When they find a bench to talk, he tries to start the conversation, but he simply doesn't know how to handle it. Hayase tries to hold Koharu's hands and explain that she was worried, but Koharu pulls away, scared, and asks if she knows the two of them from somewhere. At that moment, Kakeru remembers a conversation he had with her in the past when he asked what it was like to be blind. She described the sensation as seeing through a white veil or a fog. The conversation continued, and Koharu answered the next question with courage. He had asked when she started losing her vision, and she told him it was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. She told him about the cancer and the blindness. The doctor had found a small tumor in her brain, and at first she didn't think it would be that difficult to treat because she would only need to undergo a few procedures while lying inside a huge machine. When she was finally declared cured, Koharu believed that it had all come to an end, and for a few years she was able to live normally. But then the doctors discovered that the cancer had metastasized. The disease had spread to her retina, and she was given 2 options: remove her eyes or try to preserve them by undergoing surgery and chemotherapy. Koharu decided to keep him and went through the surgery so she could start the treatment. She told Kakeru how difficult it was to face chemotherapy since the treatment also harmed the regeneration of healthy cells. The medication made her constantly nauseous, to the point where she lost her appetite and refused meals. There were days when she felt a lot of pain and could barely walk without feeling weak. Even so, she remained determined to get better. At one point, while brushing her hair, she noticed that large amounts of strands were falling out. Gradually, she lost all her hair, and shortly after, she began to have trouble sleeping. Because of the insomnia, her mind was constantly confused and foggy. Her memory also began to fail. And one day, Koharu reached the point of not even knowing she was in a hospital. That was the end of the episode. If you made it this far, comment part 8. I'll heart everyone who comments so I know who the elite is that follows the channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what's coming next will blow your mind. And hey, don't leave without watching this video disappearing on the screen right now. The drama there manages to be even worse than what you just saw. Without further ado, Reba Bina says goodbye and see you next time.